So let's talk about nature documentaries. We've all seen them, right? But have you ever stopped to think about how they've changed? We're going to dive into how these films went from just showing us pretty pictures of animals to becoming these powerful tools for activism. It's a heck of a journey, from spectacle to resistance. Let's get into it.
Behind every single one of those breathtaking shots, the snow leopard on a cliff or a whale breaching the ocean, there's a ton of deliberate choices being made. Filmmakers aren't just pointing a camera and hitting record, no. They are crafting an emotional experience. They're trying to make us feel something about the world around us.
And that's the big question, right? What these films choose to show us and the way they show it has completely transformed over the years. So how do we get here? How did we go from just, wow, look at that beautiful bird, to documenting people literally putting their lives on the line to protect a forest? That's the story we're going to unpack. You see, at the core of it all, the mission has always been about revealing these hidden worlds. But the definition of invisible has totally evolved. It used to mean showing us secret animal behaviors. Now, it often means showing us the unseen and sometimes devastating consequences of what we humans are doing. And that's what makes this kind of storytelling so unique. It's not just passive observation. It's this incredible mix of art, science, and, advocacy. The real goal is to take something like hard climate data and wrap it up in a story that actually resonates with you, something that sticks with you long after the credits have rolled. Okay, so to really get where we are now, we've got to go back in time. We have to look at the roots of the modern environmental movement, because that's when a whole new public awareness created this urgent demand for these kinds of stories. You have to understand, before this book, most people just didn't think about the dark side of industrial progress. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring was a bombshell. It made the threat of pollution visible to everybody, arguing that we weren't just poisoning birds, we were poisoning ourselves. It was a massive wake-up call. And this new awareness just exploded. It all came to a head with the very first Earth Day back in 1970. I mean, just look at this number. An estimated 20 million Americans took to the streets. It was the single largest demonstration in the nation's history. And it sent a message to Washington that you just could not ignore. And you better believe that message was heard loud and clear. This massive public outcry gave politicians a mandate, a green light, to take real action. And it led directly to this wave of groundbreaking laws. The creation of the EPA, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act. These are the laws that are still the bedrock of environmental protection in the U.S. today. So after this big political awakening, something else happened. Technology took a massive leap forward, and it allowed filmmakers to capture the planet in ways that were just unthinkable before. This kicked off a whole new era, one that was all about pure, unadulterated awe. I mean, if you had to pick one series that just completely changed the game for an entire generation, it's got to be Planet Earth. This wasn't just another nature show on TV, no way. This was a global cinematic event. It basically created a new gold standard for what these documentaries could be. So what was the big deal? Well, for starters, it was the first time we ever saw these incredibly remote places in stunning high definition. It felt like you were right there. The scope was just mind-boggling, filmed over 5 years in more than 60 countries. It pioneered techniques we now see all the time, like those super smooth, stabilized aerial shots. But it was more than just tech. It was perfect timing. It offered this beautiful, pristine escape when the world was feeling pretty anxious. It wasn't just a technical achievement. It was an emotional one.
And really, that was the whole point of this era of filmmaking, to inspire wonder. The goal was to show us the majesty of our planet, to foster this deep sense of respect and humility, and to remind us that we're all part of something so much bigger, more beautiful, and incredibly fragile.
But here's the thing, as the environmental crisis got worse and worse, that feeling of awe just wasn't enough anymore. A new generation of filmmakers knew they needed a different approach, a more urgent toolkit to tackle issues like climate change and these intense frontline conflicts. So this became the new challenge for filmmakers, right? I mean, a chart showing rising CO2 levels, it's important information, sure, but it doesn't exactly grab you by the heart. So how do you translate that academic data into something that people can't ignore, something they can really feel? And the film Chasing Ice had this absolutely genius answer. The photographer James Baylog used time-lapse cameras to make the slow, invisible process of glaciers melting totally visible and totally heartbreaking. He turned years of climate data into a single gut-wrenching video.
You weren't just being told the glaciers were melting, you were watching them vanish.
And it wasn't just what was being filmed, but how. The whole perspective changed. Think about it. A classic nature doc often has this God's eye view, looking down on an entire ecosystem. But then a film like My Octopus Teacher comes along and flips that completely upside down. It zooms all the way in, focusing on one man's incredibly personal, vulnerable, and transformative relationship with one single animal.
And this leads us to the most recent shift, the latest evolution, where the camera itself is no longer just a tool for watching. It's become a tool for protection, for gathering evidence, and for resistance.
A film like The Territory is the perfect example of this. It was actually co-produced with the Uru'uwawau people in the Amazon. And it doesn't show them as helpless victims. It shows them as the heroes of their own story. They're using cameras, drones, you name it, to defend their land from illegal logging in real time. The filmmaking itself becomes an act of defiance. So, after this incredible journey, where does that leave us? Well, it shows that the whole purpose of environmental storytelling is never set in stone. It's constantly changing, constantly adapting to meet the challenges of our time. When you boil it all down, you can kind of see three big eras. First, there was the Awakening, which made the threat of pollution visible to push for new laws. Then came the era of awe, which showed us the planet's incredible beauty to inspire wonder. And that brings us to today, the new urgency, where films make climate data, personal struggles, and frontline struggles visible to push for direct action. So in the end, these films are so much more than just entertainment. They're like cultural barometers, right? They track how our relationship with the planet is changing. They don't just show us the world. They actually help shape how we see it and our place in it. Which leaves us with one last, really big question to think about. The challenges our planet is facing are getting bigger and more complex every day. So what's next for these storytellers? What hidden truths, what invisible connections are they going to have to show us to help us navigate the future? That's the story that's still being written.